Welcome back to the Ink Sink. I am Annie.
I'm Kaylee.
This is the publishing podcast for the rest of us. We are covering crime, lots of crime, covering crimes on crimes today, Kaylee.
Some of which is only a crime of passion in my heart and should not be prosecuted.
Good. That's a good teaser.
You're welcome.
How are you doing, Kaylee?
Girl, I'm actually doing pretty great. We had a great night last night. One of my besties arranged with my other very, very excellent besties to go out to a play. It was so wonderful.
We saw Much Ado About Nothing. We did Shakespeare in the Ruins.
It was so cool. I love that. I'm going to have to keep an eye out for performances in general. And I found another one, like I said, that I'm going to see if anybody wants to join me to go to. It's on until like the middle of August. So I'm hoping maybe somebody wants to go.
We had a good lit nerd day. It was great. I think. It was super fun.
I think you left last night briefly as you were coming, like the very last scene, so I don't know that you noticed, but Prince Pedro and Leonardo got together at the very end. They threw in an extra,
cute.
Like, an extra, marriage. Not really marriage, because they didn't have, the guy wasn't still marrying couples, but yeah.
That's adorable.
I thought it was really cute. Leonardo is a woman in this play, the one we saw last night, so.
A couple things were gender swapped, which was
fun.
It was fun. I've never seen John as a woman. That was really interesting. Yeah. It kind of took on a different connotation, but it didn't change that much, which is probably just a testament to how good Shakespeare is at writing villains. Because it's just a cartoonish human who wants to destroy everybody's happiness.
Just bitter. And honestly, just doesn't really matter. Maybe the reasons for a female Don Juan might have been better to be bitter, but frankly, they didn't really matter. It was just
bitterness is genderless.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're really saying.
It's all access, really.
Mm-hmm. How are you, Annie?
I'm doing well. I feel horrible. I overslept this morning, guys. We are recording an hour later than we should have. Kaylee waited for an hour because she's the best human, and I am a horrible friend.
These are all... Some things are accurate in that they happen, but Annie is not a very bad friend. She is a wonderful friend. It happens.
My alarm went off, and I was just like, oh, that's a nice suggestion, and then just turned it right back off again. I was watching Stranger Things very late last night because I have not watched it yet, so I am watching through the whole thing.
Oh, don't start late at night, boo.
I shouldn't have.
It's a really good show.
Yeah, so I'm halfway through season 4 now. Also, Steve Harrington is on a whole other level this season. It's insane. When did he get abs? What's going on? How does his hair still look great after he was drowned?
I think it's the internet's force from our world projecting into theirs because of how well beloved he is as best single mom on that show.
Oh my god.
He's won I think every season he's won, so seasons 2 through 4 so far he has won best single mom every time.
Absolutely. I mean, there are many single moms in that show, and Joyce is doing her best. Mm-hmm. Karen is trying, and in her defense, Ted does exist. But boy, is he bad at being a dad. Really bad at being, especially in season 4.
I saw a very funny article that was just there's a strange species that should be made real from Stranger Things. And it's not the aliens or anything. It's the children that are just unsupervised. And I'm just I don't think that's the lesson that anyone else is drawing from this show. I feel no. I think that
if anything, the unsupervised
freak.
Children
it's a problem.
Are having it. Karen is doing her best. And whenever Karen does get to help, she does a great job, okay? And Steve Harrington, great mom.
Again, excellent mom. He's doing great.
If anything,
supervise your children is the lesson that should have been taken from this. Not let your children ride around fucking solving crimes and also getting shot at by the government. What are you?
And kidnapped by the government.
They got kidnapped
regularly.
Oh, yeah, this has been since season 1, fam. It's not a new thing.
We never see Steve's parents. Where the fuck are Steve's parents?
I know, there's a free-range children movement or whatever, but, if your kid gets kidnapped, that's fucking on you.
Right, you should be trying to find the child. Unsupervised. Will was stuck in a nightmare dream world, but Joyce tried to find him.
Annie, that's what we want for our children. I don't know. This lady was fucking bonkers.
Character, Kaylee. When you get stuck in a night, whomst amongst us
hasn't been stuck in a nightmare realm?
Stuck in a nightmare dream world and had to make it work, Kaylee. That's what adults do. We make it work. Oh, sorry. I thought. Wait. No, that's what children do.
That's what...
We make it work. Like,
that's what preteens are intended, you know.
Doesn't make sense.
Their natural state.
Give the children guns and let them just hunt the wild creatures in the forest.
That sounds exactly like what a subset of American conservative parents are wanting, yes.
There is a viral article that I love when it was like, here's a list of tasks that today's children don't know how to do. And some of them were factually inaccurate. Like, they don't know how to sharpen a pencil. We do. I promise.
I assure you, if you put a pencil sharpener in front of a child and a pencil, they'll figure it out real fast.
But then some of them were like these really specific, they don't know how to shuck like a specific type of vegetable or something.
Bro.
What? And it's like, they don't know how to siphon gas. I'm like, what?
Why would they need to?
What? We have electric cars now.
The fact that you on your farm had to go to your neighbor's farm and steal their gas doesn't mean that's a regular childhood event that happens.
Yeah, your nostalgia is getting the better of you there, sir. That should not have happened to begin with. My friends and I found it a while ago, and every now and then we'll just resend it around and be like, hey, did anyone learn how to siphon gas this year? Because I still know how to sharpen a pencil, so my skills are covered.
Nailed it. Children today. Jesus Christ.
Honestly, the youths. What are we doing with them?
Failing them. Clearly, we're not giving them guns and sending them off to fight monsters with their whittling knives, Annie. I'm sorry.
Oh my God.
I do understand, guys, and I know I'm part of the problem right now because, again, these are the vocal minority, and we've talked about this before about how, like, there are majorities of the country that are not wildly ignorant about how the real world works. However,
they don't believe that all children should be given guns
and sent off to fight crime.
To fight crime.
Tiny vigilantes.
Supernatural crime. Let's get into the news, Kaylee.
Okay. That's our sound effect for starting the news segment.
Good. I'm actually just gonna sample that, and I'm just gonna put that as the interstitial for the next, 3 things.
You're welcome.
I'll put that in the background of the drums that normally comes through. Anyway. Kaylee! What the hell is going on with the spine collector case?
I don't know.
Me neither!
And yet he still, again, has done nothing to earn his moniker because that's such a cool moniker and he is lame. This person is not deserving. The media has yet again provided a mediocre person with a really cool fucking name. And I'm mad about it.
Me too. Why don't you give us the background on this story so we can talk about what's going on now?
So historically speaking, because I don't know how much of this has actually made it anywhere onto the show because our original episode where we talked about this is we were outside and you could hear cars and the dog and we didn't know not to have ice in our drinks. So the spine collector, which we have mentioned previously, but maybe not in full, is the tale of a person or persons. It was a person ultimately. Basically catfishing and or social engineering their way into getting access to manuscripts, unpublished manuscripts. And it wasn't just one-offs or popular ones or one company that was being hit. It was a variety of companies, overarching genres, popular, not popular, small time, large numbers, really anticipated, really niche. It was just a huge swath. And there was no reason, no money was exchanged, no threats were made, no blackmail or extortion rose up. It was just a dude. And so for a while, we were kind of all right, sure, whatever, so chaos, do you, little gremlin. But then they were mean, and so we had to stop supporting them. So anyway, Annie, why don't you tell us what has recently come about?
So the accused, Filippo Bernardini, was arrested by the FBI. We don't know what ultimately made the FBI get involved in the case. We probably won't find out.
Friends in high places. Come on, guys. Nepotism. Always. It's always nepotism. But continue.
Yeah, we probably won't find out directly anytime soon because Filippo Bernardini has taken it's not a plea agreement technically, but it's more or less a plea agreement. Basically, he has pled not guilty, but he is going to plead no contest to the specific charges that the FBI has laid out, I believe. And he is going to go to jail. He's, I believe, going to federal prison, and that's it. There is still no description, no motive that we know of, no statements forthcoming. I am greatly anticipating someone writing this book because I need to know why he did this.
And someday I'm going to write the alternative world where this is like a cybercrime like training ground.
Yes, because
my idea was so much more interesting than the real world, as is frequently the case.
It really was the perfect crime because no money was being exchanged, but he was clearly getting something out of it. Why would he keep doing it if he wasn't getting something out of it? Maybe it was just the thrill? I don't know.
Just the thrill chasing from fucking over publishers.
Because honestly, there are probably ones that we don't know about that got stolen.
Absolutely. 100%. People don't even know about it because he was just really good at it. Yeah, actually, these tactics are, if you're curious to look into how he did this, and these articles, I know Annie publishes the links when she puts out these episodes. You should look into it because they're very helpful to know, like, these are regular tactics. This person just collected a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. Be on the lookout for these.
Yeah, like, you should absolutely review what he did and how he did it so you know to keep an eye out.
And it's unfortunate because this came to us from The Guardian, which is a British paper, and we are in America, obviously, and it seems like the American publishing associations have just moved on, and I'm really mad about it because I want to know why. It's so tantalizing. Every time something comes up, it's like, oh, he did it, but we're not going to tell you why.
You don't get to know.
Why? There was no money. Why?
It's very frustrating.
It's so frustrating.
Yep. We deserve to know.
We do, Kaylee. We have been very good. and we
we don't ask for much.
We don't really.
Actually, we don't.
We deserve this gift, and it's not being given to us, and I'm mad about it.
Somebody needs to cover this.
I hope so.
Everybody's unionizing. Everybody wants protections, and, like, I feel it. Like, super feel it. So, a lot of publishers and reporters, curators, etc., are moving into a space where they're trying to unionize, or they're attempting to exercise their authority or power as a union and get protection and equity. So there are 3 major ones right now that we have. So the Hill's newsroom unionized.
For those of you who are outside the DMV, the Hill is one of the biggest political news sources.
And then HarperCollins has a union, and they had a one-day picket. And this is something that we have talked about. Many companies over the last 3 years during the pandemic reported record-breaking profits. And people are still struggling and getting screwed over. And they're not seeing this. Why are you like this? Your people are literally struggling to feed themselves. They're working 3 jobs to support themselves in an area where you want them to be employed. Like, you want them to be geographically located. You want them to be geographically located near you, or you're requiring them to be in this area that's really fucking expensive to live. And then you're not going to pay them appropriately to live there? You piece of shit.
Yeah.
Sorry. I feel very strongly about this. Anyway, also the Atlantic is unionizing as well. Workers at the Atlantic are unionizing as well, and they're working with a company that supports the New Yorkers Union, I believe, and several other major organizations, news organizations as well. And I think the Atlantic is recognizing it, if I remember correctly, right? They're voluntarily recognizing it.
It's still up in the air, but they have said that they will do their best to make sure that those needs are met. I will say we've talked about this a little bit on the show, how horrible the working conditions are for people, specifically in New York, but in general in the publishing industry.
DC is another really expensive place to live, you guys, to be clear.
And it's a lot. I mean, just the amount of work that these people have to do.
Especially in a job like this where you're quote-unquote salary. They're essentially asking for free labor.
Right.
And that means that you don't have time to do that second or third job, or you don't have time to sleep when you're doing that to earn your rent money and food money and car insurance. You have a membership on the metro or the train to get in because you can't live in DC or whatever, and you can't spend the money to parking. If nobody else has told you this, parking in DC is absolutely absurd.
Everything in the entire DMV area is super expensive. Housing, parking, transportation, and anywhere that you can live close to the DC metro, it's gonna be expensive. Mm-hmm. And it's not just the DC metro. The Baltimore metro is the same. We live in Owings Mills, and this is an expensive area, and it's partially because we are so close to the Baltimore Metro.
The Metro station has an apartment complex that is absurdly expensive. Like, it seems great.
Yeah.
If I didn't have to have a car payment.
Right.
But I still think that it's like more...
Oh my God.
I looked it up when I was moving here and I just cried.
But yeah, so heartening union news. Hopefully these people are able to get better compensation, or compensation at least commensurate to the amount of work that they're doing, especially in light of the fact that many of these CEOs have gotten record profits over the past 2 years. Fingers crossed. Obviously, Kaylee and I support workers. We are workers ourselves. I have 2 jobs and I'm going to school. We absolutely want to support that the people who are bringing you the news, the books, the things that you love. That's a great thing. I mean, we can grouse about politics, but the people who are covering it are so important at The Hill. And The Atlantic is doing some of the best long reads out there. And of course, HarperCollins is one of the biggest publishers in America. So if you like any of those things, you should support the workers getting compensation for those things.
Guys, if you like the content, these are the people creating it, frankly.
Moving on, this is from Adweek. Facebook's traffic to news sources
surprising.
has
no
fallen.
One. What? Annie, you mean now that they have to pay for it, they don't want to do it anymore? Go figure. Oh my God. Sorry, who could have predicted this? Okay, now I'm done.
So Adweek is I don't know if it's technically a trade publisher anymore. It's pretty mainstream, but Adweek basically covers marketing news. And so they have been tracking how Facebook is referring its users out to third-party news sources. So it has this chart here showing the ramp up of the news and then the ramp down of Facebook's focus on news. And we were talking about this. We talked about this, how shocked I was about the
funny.
top news sources,
really
and you
funny.
couldn't guess. I don't know about you, but I thought that this news source didn't exist anymore.
I guess maybe it's because it's just like quietly collecting and not trying to call it like attention to itself. So as it like slowly recovers from the last 10 years.
Yeah. So the number one news source that Facebook refers out to is Yahoo News.
Yup.
Why? Question mark. We don't know. But yeah, so everybody else is kind of clustered down. But in general, they are all trending downward. So Facebook is just losing a lot of referral traffic. And I found this other article. This is from the Morning Brew. Going forward, it looks like Facebook is going to try to make that change permanent. They are planning to deprioritize news in the future and prioritize short-form video and viral content.
It's so frustrating because the whole point of Facebook was to connect to the people that you in your community that you like are familiar with and wanted to be friends with, and it's just changing it so that it's just another clone of anything else, and you're getting advertising and content from other people that they've bumped, for whatever, and it's just so frustrating. Also, again, just to be clear, Zuckerberg was hardcore onto this is going to be a news platform up until he had to pay for the efforts that people were putting into it, and can't just parasitically leech from the journalists doing all of this work. Anyway, it's going to be another TikTok clone is really what this boils down to, and that's what the article discusses too.
Yeah, they're going to be leaning hard into the algorithm instead of into the more local content. It seems like things are changing on the old OG social media platform. Let's move on to some heartening news, Kaylee.
Annie, this is so good. There's more than 300 bookstores have opened. Local bookstores, independent bookstores have opened in the last couple of years, which is
more than before.
Yeah, 300 more at least. More than.
Right.
I think that's wonderful. I mean, obviously, it seems very heartening as far as the communities rallying around the local bookstore, your community center during the pandemic, especially when there was definite issues and concerns, especially when the shutdowns occurred where they just didn't know how they were going to be able to get through, and the huge transition and shift to digital content production and also just ordering and delivery. And so a lot of communities have seen a resurgence. And then not only have communities seen a resurgence in just local bookstores, but also, I don't want to say specialized interests, but more balanced interests for the world. People are like, I wanted to see these things when I was growing up or as a person in the world now, and I didn't. So people that, wanted more content about Asian heritage or LGBTQ things and the Black experience, growing up as a young Black woman, stuff like that just wasn't present on the shelves at all. And now you have more of these forums opening up and bookstores opening up by people that wanted this and are going to go ahead and market market it, and they're doing very well, which I think is wonderful.
This story, there are two stories here from the New York Times and one from the Christian Science Monitor, and I'm going to read a quote from the Christian Science Monitor story. According to the American Booksellers Association CEO Allison Hill, the association now has over 2,000 members at 2,500 locations, an increase of more than 300 since spring 2021. It is the highest ABA total in years, even though the association in 2020 tightened its rules and permitted only stores which primarily sell books, which is over 50% of inventory, as opposed to stores just offering books. And the ABA also no longer counts sellers who have been active. So this is an increase after a major decrease. So like the denominator changed and the numerator changed. Sorry, that was a fraction. So not only did it go up, but like it went up over a base that was highly controlled, which means that people having, neighborhood bookstores where they just have like a couple shelves in their neighborhood bodega is still not counted as a bookstore, but that's also growing. That side of the business is also growing. And this is a quote from the New York Times. Many of the new stores that opened during the pandemic are run by non-white booksellers, among them the Salt Eaters Bookshop in Inglewood, California, which specializes in books by and about Black women, girls, and non-binary people. The Libros Bookmobile, a Latina-owned mobile bookstore in a converted school bus in Taylor, Texas, which stocks fiction in Spanish and English. And Reader's Block, a Black-owned bookshop in Stratford, Connecticut. That's incredible. I genuinely thought about putting this into our Celebrating Women and Minorities in Publishing section. There are actually a couple news articles this week that could have easily just gone into there. But you know what? I think this is news on its own. I think that this is really important for us to highlight because this is big news for bookselling as a business.
It's not just that, it's just collecting what people have been saying and proving it, essentially, which is, there's definitely been some naysayers like, oh, this wasn't going to work or whatever. People don't want this. No, people want this. You don't want this. You don't get to tell a young Black woman what kind of books she wants to read.
Yeah, and that especially got brought up in my mind, specifically talking about the ABA. We've talked about the problems at the ABA for a while. You can go back and listen to it. There were a lot of transphobic issues within the ABA, and so the ABA changed especially in the light of what happened to George Floyd, it changed its policies to reflect a tolerance towards trans people and an encouragement of investment in non-white businesses. And there was a huge shakeup in the ABA board over that, saying, this is ridiculous, we shouldn't be supporting this kind of thing, the point of free speech is free speech, you can't just pick and choose, and the American Booksellers Association says, actually, we can.
We've chosen not to embrace hate. Yes.
Yeah, we've chosen not to embrace hate. Basically, they removed the protections for free speech in their policies so they could better address when someone is being transphobic or racist or sexist or any other number of issues. So it is also really heartening to see the ABA growing, even in light of that, or I should say, even in spite of the haters out there who are saying, oh, this will never work, this is horrible on principle, I have to hate this. And instead, we have an increase in people who are feeling safe to get in with the ABA and have the support that they need as small business owners, which is really like the point here, that these people are getting the support that they need.
And doing well. And their communities are responding, which I think is wonderful because it, again, proves the point that you are just a terrible judge of your market stream. Not only are you a bad person, you're a bad capitalist, which I know hurts you more. So
Kaylee's like, I'm coming.
Unholstered, sorry.
Moving back into books as a business, we have a lot to unpack here. The Publishers Weekly published the book sales so far in 2022. They're higher now than they were in 2019, which was the last pre-pandemic year, but they are lower than their 2021 numbers, which is worrying some experts. New books are doing less well than the forecasters expected, and older, more established books are down from last year too. The pandemic seems to have been a boon for books, and the industry seems to be kind of anxious and wondering if this was the last gasp.
I'm just laughing at that because no, you guys are always Chicken Little, okay? Like, sit down. Don't go touch some grass. I'm serious. Yes, the pandemic was a boon for books because people couldn't leave their damn house. That is a crisis market, and yes, it is not going to be the same the whole time, but I think it's still pretty promising that people are up as far as it goes.
Mm-hmm. Up from 2019, absolutely.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, you want a stable market. You don't want your public to be constantly under this sort of pressure where they're just escapists. I think it was really telling that some of the markets that were starting to trend downward are mental health and dealing with family communications, etc., because you were trapped. And it's not that people didn't love their families or whatever, but you need time away and time to decompress, and it was very stressful when you were trapped with the people that you loved, or even if it was like a fairly new relationship. It makes sense to me. The market is stabilizing.
Yeah,
Ultimately.
I understand why these people are upset.
And it's just so consistent. It's like every other year. It's like, oh, the death of print media, the death of the book, the novel is dying. No, you're stupid.
Hearteningly, one of the growth areas was LGBTQ books. This is another...
Minorities and like special interest groups where they're finally getting a forum.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this is very much related to the Booksellers story that we covered earlier. This is from Publishing Perspectives. So far in 2022, LGBTQ fiction book sales have increased year over year by 39%. Which is a lot. Good for them.
I'm so glad that we're seeing it come to fruition and proving out everything that people have been saying for years and disproving all of those people that are like, oh, nobody wants to buy this. Like, no, Pete, you're wrong, and we'll prove it with our money, you terrible capitalist. You're bad at capitalism, and that's the worst insult I can tell you to you corporate man.
Pete the capitalist.
Pete the capitalist.
Our new arch nemesis.
Get like a stock image of a man in a really ill-fitting suit pointing a disapproving finger out at us and like my cat yelling at him.
Oh, yes! Perfect! Oh my god, we need to do that.
Nobody else is gonna get that.
Anyway. And on to mildly depressing news. So, on to libraries. Where do you want to start? Let's start with the Internet Archive, I guess.
Yeah.
So the Internet Archive, for those of you who don't know, it's a little bit of a renegade entity. It's sort of like a cross between Project Gutenberg and Libby. So it's a library. It's a lending library that lends things out, and it essentially lends them out for free. But it is under scrutiny at the moment. This is an article from The Nation. It was a very biased article. Kaylee,
I couldn't actually get to it, so I just read other things.
Yeah, so Kaylee will have probably more measured information. But basically, the publishers believe that the Internet Archive is taking sales of their digital ebooks away from them by loaning them out. So basically, what happens is the Internet Archive buys a book, scans it in, and lends out the digital version one at a time. Like, this isn't, a fly-by-night pirate operation. It's lending the books out, as a library does, one at a time. And in the Internet Archive's policies, it believes that the print publication, or the print book and the digital book are a one-to-one, which means that if someone had checked out the physical book, no one could check out the digital book. Someone has checked out the digital book, no one can check out the physical book. Someone has borrowed the digital book, it is analogous to borrowing the physical book. This doesn't seem strange, probably, to those of you who haven't been following this. Unfortunately, the publishers don't like that very much. What the publishers want to do is have the Internet Archive pay them every time someone borrows the book for the license.
So, again, just to circle back, this is exactly the same sort of bullshit that they're pulling with traditional actual libraries, and we do not support that, just to be clear.
Yeah, so our stance is that libraries are a public service, and trying to wring more money out of them is a bad look.
Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't do it, and also, you're just hurting, again, poor people specifically. You're punching down consistently. Every time you do this, every single publisher that's that's bringing this suit forward, you're punching down. I will say that there was ongoing discussion. It was a little murky. The lawsuit, however, didn't get brought until during the pandemic when the Internet Archive opened it up to not a one-to-one loan ratio. Mm-hmm. So they called it an emergency response, essentially, and they were not loaning it at a one-to-one ratio. They were just loaning out the digital copies. And that was what the trigger for the lawsuit was. But it is not the content of the lawsuit. The lawsuit is definitely focused overall on the traditional model, because the Internet Archive was very clear about the one-to-one ratio being restored the minute that the national emergency, which was the pandemic, was no longer in effect and people could actually participate more regularly in going to their local libraries. So for what it's worth. But still, they're bad and they should stop this. This is stupid.
Basically, so ultimately what the publishers want to do, and this is them kind of shoring up their arguments, they want users to pay licensing fees for all digital books because
And it's not just the libraries. They want everybody to do this.
Yeah, they want to have, like, every time you buy a book on your Kindle or your Nook or wherever, they want you to pay a fee to keep that book. They want it essentially to be a rental that you are paying regularly for, which might work for some people, like, that's fine. But ultimately, the people that it's going to hurt are poor people. And when your policy is mainly going to be hurting poor people, you should really rethink that policy. And especially when you're talking about a public service like a library and going after them for serving their public, serving their communities. I'm sorry, but we have trouble seeing your side as anything other than just a greedy corporation being a greedy corporation.
No, they're greedy corporations and they're trash.
In other library news, this might have fallen out of the mainstream news, but libraries are still fighting over banned books. This comes from The Hill. This library in Iowa had to temporarily close after resignations regarding LGBT book bans.
Librarians don't make bank, fam. Like, I just want to be clear. It's not like they're raking in millions of dollars. They're basically one step up from public servants. Or they're largely volunteers. Just to be clear.
I do understand the conflict. I don't want to, say that, like, all librarians should quit their jobs over book bannings, but I do absolutely understand where those resignations were coming from. Yeah.
They can go somewhere else.
It's a job. Ultimately, public servants are public servants, but also it is a job, and if it's too much for you, then it's too much for you. There's no shame.
It's overwhelming your ability to process for your own mental well-being.
Yeah.
Like, go.
And I wanted to say to all people who work in libraries, like, we feel for you. We got your back. Like, if you ever need to vent, send us your library
Please
vents.
Do.
We will read them on the air.
Absolutely. And I do just want to say the complaints were specifically so absurd too, because they called out the numbers. They're like, oh, it's this agenda about, like, LGBTQ books on, like, our children's shelves, and they counted them out, and they're like, I'm going to read a quote specifically.
Please do.
Her mother, Deb Hassan, at the same meeting said that for each book promoting the LGBTQ lifestyle, there should be another title addressing a Christian belief that God created people as either male or female from birth for life. Disclaimer, we do not agree with this. Just in general. So the library's director, Renee Greenlee, who was one of the people that quit, called the woman's comments discriminatory and said she had informed her staff to alert her if they feel they are being harassed or threatened by a library patron. She said an audit of the library's children's collection had revealed that of nearly 6,000 titles, 3 had a subject heading of LGBT, 2 had a heading of gay, and 2 had a heading of transgendered. Another 173 children's books were based on Christian life, she said, as reported in The Eagle. You have no argument here. You Christian hystericist, get out. Leave my public forum.
Yeah.
I don't want to ever hear any more from you.
Yeah.
Sorry. Annie is the objective one.
Even if she wanted, like, the Christian views to be double the LGBTQ views, it already was orders of magnitude.
It's not
larger.
what she actually wants, and she just didn't want to say it, is I don't want anyone to ever hear anything about anything I don't personally like. Wah, wah, wah. Cut that out if you want. I don't care. Leave it in. I hate this stuff. It's so trashy.
It is super trashy. And again, Kaylee and I are obviously in support of libraries. As public services go, this is the one that I think we should all be able to agree on. Access to information is so important to education, to life, to learning, to community, to everything. And a lot of people just don't want anyone to have access to information. And that's on its face bad. So hopefully we can move past this at some point, but I obviously feel for those workers who resigned. So sorry for everything that's happening.
I know they did. They definitely resigned because of harassment. Just to be very clear, it wasn't just that they were taking a moral stance. Like, they were being harassed, and it wasn't just because of, like, the books on their shelves. It was they were being harassed because of their personal life. Like, it was because they were LGBTQ or in some form or fashion opposed to these vocal minorities. So more power to you. I hope you guys found wonderful paying jobs somewhere else that fulfill you or whatever.
Yeah.
Like whatever you needed for this job, out of that job, I hope you found it double somewhere else in a community that actually supports you and deserves you.
Absolutely. Moving on to our favorite news section. Kaylee, you are our resident poetry person. Would you like to tell us about the new poet laureate?
So, I think it's Ada Limon has been named U.S. Poet Laureate, and I'm so happy for her. Like, congrats, girl. That is amazing. So she's actually succeeding Joy Harjo, who was the former Poet Laureate. And she is... I don't know. I just think I read a couple of her poems. Like I actually hadn't read it before, which is terrible. I know I'm a bad poet, but I read some of her poems and they're so good.
Yeah.
They're just really moving. I think the nice thing about like especially modern poetry now is that it's just really easy to connect to in a lot of ways, in my opinion. And some of the older stuff, not all of it, but some of the older stuff is just difficult. I'd say that that's one of the coolest things about technology is just how it's opened up access and markets and readers across the board for people that don't have a traditional education or audience. Like I think or have traditional experiences for famous poets.
Yeah, I want to read a quote from Carla Hayden, who is the Librarian of Congress, and she's the one who appoints the Poet Laureate. She said in a statement, Ada Limon's accessible, engaging poems ground us in where we are and who we are, and who we share our world with. They speak of intimate truths, of the beauty and heartbreak that is living in ways that help us to move forward.
Oh yeah. No, I think her stuff's cool. And check out her books. Seriously, just check them out.
Yeah, we'll have a link in the show notes to the Publishers Weekly announcement, which also lists many of Ms. Limon's books. Congratulations to the new U.S. Poet Laureate.
Yeah.
Separately, we have a books update from the new books editor at Vulture will be Maris Kreisman. Congratulations. That's awesome. That's a dream job.
Absolutely good for her. She was so cute. She was just like, I'm really looking forward to sending some good stuff out. And I thought that was adorable. Her little Twitter announcement.
Yes. So we'll be linking to her Twitter
for more info.
She is currently a weekly contributor to LitHub. If you are not subscribed to LitHub and want to know where we get a lot of our sources, go ahead and subscribe to LitHub. It's just a lovely little newsletter that comes in. I think it's once a day. You just get news about books, what's going on in books and poetry and the industry, and deep dives into random things that are lovely. And I've loved Maris Kreisman's writing. So congratulations to all of the women and minorities in publishing. Keep on sparkling.
That's right.
And now for our favorite non-news section. Kaylee, what are you reading?
All right, so I just started reading, I love fairy tales and stuff. On one of my many perusals of Kindle, for better or worse, one of the options, like as you like, oh, you like X, Y, or Z, and it was from, I think, my T. Kingfisher, Bryony and Rose's dive from that sect. It's like, oh, you like this book, you might like these other 12 pages of books. So I found this book called Gold Mane, and I think one of my favorite...
Gold Mane?
Gold Mane. Mayne, yeah.
Okay.
So it's all one word, Goldmayne. And it's basically the author, like the intro for the book is like, so when I was a kid, I read this collection of fairy tales and they were really obscure and I liked these two ones specifically. And then I was really hoping that at some point somebody would give me more about these characters, and they never did. And I was sad. And then as an adult, I was like, wait a minute, I can do it. And so then he did. So I think it's wonderful. I just started it not too long ago. And the main character is a 17-year-old farm boy. It's a fairy tale. He has, his mom was like really sweet, biggest fan kind of deal, died. And his dad's like a not great person, as is frequently the case in fairy tales. So she died when he was around 13. And then he kind of put up with it until he was about 17. And then he just left. He basically walked off and he was like, you know what, if I'm going to be miserable no matter what, at least I'll be miserable on my own.
Yeah.
And so this is set in a world where, people know about magic and fairies and stuff. And so he's basically just kind of sleeping in hedgerows and like doing his best, foraging for berries and like really hungry, but like at least I'm not getting the shit kicked out of me every other day. Then the quintessential which character shows up. And I love this a lot, actually, because they really went hard into the stereotype. So, like, she's got this massive, massive black horse that she's riding, and she changes, like, size multiple times in the scene, and the character notices, and he's like, this is weird as shit. Like, was I wrong? The stick is not that big. How did she poke me with it multiple times? And how did she get up on this horse? And then, like, he finally gets invited to tend her house and, like, basically be a caretaker.
Ooh.
And, like, at first she's like, you've got a, well, you're a fine looking young man. I'd love to add you to my collection, but moving on. And you never hear about that again. And he's too tired to think about that being a thing. But then she mentions her statue garden later that's been overgrown. And you're like, I'm like, he was less so. But anyway, so it's just, he's just doing his best. But yeah, and I just enjoy the fact that it's like calling like all this stuff out, and he's like, well, maybe I was wrong. Never doubt yourself, Conrad.
Trust your gut.
That's
you
right.
got this, bud.
So, Annie, my love, what are you reading?
I am reading a book called Actually, the Comma Goes Here.
Oh, you sent that to me.
It's a book about punctuation. I understand why these books exist, to be honest. We all have to learn about punctuation. We might as well learn about it in an engaging, funny style. So I get it, but also, in the same breath, I don't know who the audience for this book is. Like, I'm reading it and I'm enjoying it, mostly because I already know all these rules and I'm, like, enjoying the, like, meta
anecdotes,
of the jokes.
Yeah.
But a kid, I don't know, like, a kid reading about punctuation for the first time, I don't know if they would enjoy it. I don't have any kids, so I genuinely don't know.
I could send some excerpts to Sam and see
we
what
need
she
to
thinks.
find a child, really. I don't have any. If anyone has a kid they want to donate to the cause of figuring things out for us, we'll give them back.
Yeah.
Probably.
At some point.
We're not the witches. We don't have horses, so
it's true.
We
No
also
horses.
don't have any statue gardens.
No, it's true.
The author is Lucy Cripps, and she's really good. Like, she obviously knows all her stuff. Like, it's all obviously accurate information. Well, not obviously. It is all accurate information. It's very good. And she also breaks down for, people who genuinely need to know this professionally. She breaks down the different style guides and how they treat each punctuation mark, which is super helpful. I have only ever worked with the Chicago and AP style books, but she also breaks down the MLA and APA style books. So really helpful if you were interested in that kind of thing. If you are someone who wants to go into editing, specifically proofreading or copy editing, and you want to know how the style guides break down, I think it's a really, really good book for that. I'm enjoying it.
If you're cross-majoring too, like, this would be a very helpful source to look at when you're cross-majoring. You've got journalism and English. I was in communications and English courses, so I was actually using MLA in Chicago at the same time.
Oh, you were using both?
Girl, it was rough.
Oh, I got very lucky. I never had to use more than one. and if also, I will say, if you're someone who is suddenly finding themselves being forced to write a lot, like if you are a scientist who suddenly has to write studies, you might find it useful as well, just because she breaks it down in a really wonderful, accessible way, and there's jokes all over, so you don't feel intimidated with why ampersand is pronounced that way kind of thing, and all the difference between all the different types of dashes. And she does go into those. So it's really nice. Highly recommend, for sure. Do you want to do a Kaylee Coda for the new section?
Remember that librarians are people. Remember that your public servants are people. Honestly. I mean, it's support people, but if you think that they're not fulfilling your needs as a community, they're still people. If you don't want somebody speaking ill to you, don't speak ill to other people. Like, I don't understand why people think it's okay to just be shitty. You were absolutely taught, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. I know you were. So keep a civil tongue in your head.
There you go. Thanks for listening to The Ink Sink. I have been Annie.
I'm Kaylee.
You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Bookshop. You can email us at theinksinkpodcast@gmail.com. And we are always offering free advertising for our listeners who want to shout out their work, especially our underrepresented listeners in publishing. Thank you to our subscribers. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you, Abby. You're the best.
If you would like to subscribe and support us at whatever dollar amount or cent amount, you can have less than $1. You can do 99 cents if you want to. You don't have to. If you would like to, though, you can go onto our Anchor or our Spotify. I believe our tips are open on Twitter, too. Thank you, everybody. Have